The plains stretched wide and merciless, a sun-bleached ocean of grass and dirt that swallowed men whole if they weren't careful. The wind moved low across the land, carrying grit and the scent of dry sage, rattling the loose boards of fence posts and whispering through cattle bones nailed above barn doors to ward off bad spirits. Out here nothing came easy. Not water, not love, not forgiveness. Clayton. Rourke stood on the porch of his ranch house with his thumbs hooked into his gun belt, watching the horizon like it owed him something. He was a hard man carved by harder years, broad-shouldered, sun-darkened, his face permanently set in the kind of grim patience that came from burying too many dreams under too much dirt. The Rourke ranch had been in his family since before the railroad cut the land in half, and every acre of it had been paid for in blood, sweat, and silence. Today was supposed to be simple. Today his bride was arriving. Clayton hadn't wanted a wife, not really. But land had rules, and so did survival. A man alone was easy prey, easy for rustlers, bankers, and vultures with paper contracts and polished smiles. The town council had said it plain. A married man looked settled, stable, trustworthy. So he had agreed to a mail-order arrangement. A woman from back east, God-fearing, plain. Someone who would cook, keep house, and leave his ghosts undisturbed. That was the expectation. The dust plume on the far road said otherwise. A single rider emerged from the haze, mounted on a black horse so glossy it caught the sun like spilled oil. The animal moved with controlled power, head high, hooves striking the earth with deliberate confidence. Not the sway of a tired traveler, not the posture of fear. Clayton narrowed his eyes. As the rider drew closer, details sharpened. The figure sat straight in the saddle, long coat fluttering behind her like a banner. Dark hair spilled loose down her back, catching in the wind. When she finally slowed at the ranch gate, she swung down from the horse with practiced ease. She was not plain. She was black, her skin deep and luminous against the dust-washed world. Her gaze sharp and assessing, unafraid to meet his. She stood tall, every inch of her posture, declaring she belonged exactly where she was. Clayton felt something shift in his chest. Not welcome, not relief. "Danger! You Clayton Rourke?" she asked. Her voice was low, steady, carrying no apology. He nodded once. "Depends who's asking." She reached into her coat. His hand twitched toward his revolver before she produced folded papers, sealed and official. "Name's Eliza Freeman. I believe you're expecting me." The world went quiet except for the wind. Clayton stared at her, mind racing. This wasn't right. This wasn't what he'd agreed to. The letters had mentioned nothing about this. About her. "You're the bride?" he said finally. She didn't flinch. "I am." A dozen questions burned his tongue. None of them were polite. Behind her the plains watched. Somewhere far off a hawk screamed. Clayton took the papers, his fingers brushing hers by accident. The contact was brief, electric, unwelcome. He dropped his hand like it had been burned. "This is a mistake," he said. Eliza's lips curved, not a smile, a challenge. Mistakes don't usually travel 1,000 miles on horseback. She glanced at the ranch house, the barns, the cattle grazing under the brutal sun. "This yours?" "For now," Clayton said. "Then it's ours," she replied. "If you don't mind honoring your word." His jaw tightened. Word was everything out here. And so was reputation. From the tree line beyond the corrals, unseen eyes watched. Men who knew the Rourke ranch was vulnerable. Men who'd heard whispers that Clayton Rourke was distracted today. Clayton didn't know it yet. But the arrival of this woman had just put a target on them both. And the greatest danger wasn't the men in the shadows. It was the fire stirring in his chest, unwanted, undeniable, and already out of his control. The night settled over the plains like a held breath. Stars burned cold and sharp above the Rourke ranch, scattered across the sky as if someone had flung shattered glass into the heavens. The wind died down after sunset, leaving the world eerily still, broken only by the lowing of cattle and the creak, of old wood shifting with temperature and age. Clayton Rourke hadn't slept. He sat at the small table inside the ranch house, lantern light casting long, crooked shadows across the walls. A tin cup of coffee sat untouched beside him, gone bitter hours ago. Across the room, Eliza lay on the narrow bed he'd insisted she take. Fully dressed, boots lined neatly beneath it. Distance, boundaries. That was the lie he told himself. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing in the dust that afternoon, unbowed, unafraid, looking at him like she expected the world to meet her terms for once. It unsettled him more than any gunman ever had. You always stare holes through walls when you can't sleep? Eliza's voice broke the silence. Clayton didn't turn. Usually I drink. She pushed herself up on one elbow. And tonight? Tonight, I think. That sounds worse. He exhaled slowly. You didn't say much about where you came from. I said enough. Out here, he said, finally looking at her. What you don't say matters more than what you do. Eliza met his gaze in the lantern light. There was weariness there now beneath the steel. And what if saying it gets people killed? The words landed heavy. Clayton studied her, measuring truth the way a man measured distance to a target. Then you'd better hope the ones coming don't find you first. She swung her legs off the bed, boots hitting the floor softly. They won't, I made sure of that. He almost believed her. Almost. Outside, a horse snorted. Clayton's hand went to his gun before the sound fully registered. He stood in one smooth motion, lanterns swinging slightly as he moved to the window. He peered out into the darkness beyond the corral. Nothing. Too quiet. He grabbed his hat and rifle. Stay inside. Eliza was already pulling on her coat. Not a chance. This ain't a discussion. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If someone followed me here, it's my danger too. Their eyes locked. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Clayton swore under his breath. Fine, but you do exactly what I say. A corner of her mouth lifted. You'll find I don't do that easy. They stepped onto the porch together, lantern light spilling onto the dirt. Clayton scanned the perimeter, senses stretched thin. He knew the difference between the sounds of the land and the sounds of men, pretending to be part of it. A flicker of movement near the south fence. There, Eliza whispered. Clayton raised the rifle, heart hammering. Get behind me. Before she could argue, a voice drifted out of the darkness. Easy now, Rourke. Ain't nobody here to start trouble. Clayton recognized the voice instantly. Silas Boone, a low-life ranch hand turned hired muscle, with eyes like a snake and a smile that never meant anything good. He stepped into the lantern's edge, hands visible. Two other men flanking him like wolves. Boone, Clayton said coldly, you got a lot of nerve coming this close. Silas chuckled. Heard you got yourself a wife. Eliza stiffened behind Clayton. Congratulations, Silas went on. Boss figured he ought to come pay his respects. Clayton's grip tightened on the rifle. Your boss can rot. Maybe, Silas said, but he's real interested in that land of yours, especially now that you've got complications. His gaze slid past Clayton, lingering on Eliza. Something ugly twisted in Clayton's gut. She ain't part of this, Clayton said. Silas smiled wider. Everyone's part of it. In a blur of motion, Clayton fired a warning shot into the dirt, inches from Silas's boots. Dust exploded upward. Get off my land, Clayton growled. Now! The smile vanished. Silas raised his hands again, backing away slowly. No harm meant. Just thought you ought to know. Know what? That some folks don't take kindly to surprises. The men melted back into the darkness, leaving the night colder than before. Clayton stood there long after they were gone. Eliza broke the silence. They're coming for you because of me. No, Clayton said. They're coming because this land's worth something. You just made the timing worse. She looked out across the plains, jaw tight. I didn't mean to bring war to your door. Clayton turned to her, voice low. Out here, war doesn't need an invitation. Their eyes met again, something unspoken passing between them. Fear, respect, and a pull neither. Back inside, the ranch house felt smaller. When Eliza finally lay back down, Clayton remained awake, rifle across his knees. He understood now that marrying her wasn't the danger. Loving her would be. And worse still, protecting her might cost him everything. If this chapter tightened its grip on you, don't forget to like the video, comment with your thoughts on Silas Boone's warning, and subscribe to follow this frontier saga.